Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As usual, I want to remind everybody, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. So, yes, hi, hello, again. Welcome, everybody. We are going to discuss one of the most controversial topics in the country right now, and especially one of the most controversial topics in libertarianism, and that's immigration. Let me go ahead and warn you right off the jump. By the end of this episode, half of y'all will probably still love me and half of y'all might hate me. So let me just go ahead and apologize in advance. But let's go ahead and start this off with my personal feelings on immigration. Personally, I am very pro-immigration. I am so old, I remember when America was the bright, shining city on the hill. I am very much a child of the 80s and 90s, where it was something that was kind of a point of pride that people wanted to come here. Obviously, we are a nation of immigrants. Obviously, we all came here from somewhere else, unless you're a full-blooded Native American. So, yeah, I'm very pro-immigration. I don't apologize for that. Moreover, I'm not a huge fan of our current immigration setup. I feel like it's too difficult for low-skilled labor to come into to America legally. And even the higher skilled labor, like the HB1, the HB2 visas, I think, if memory serves, we ran out of those for the year back in March. So, yeah, I think this is all just way, way, way too restrictive at this point, and that it does really need to be loosened up, especially as it pertains to the lower skilled workers, because what we're starting to have right now is record employment levels, which is a good thing. But the flip side to that is the more people that are employed, the harder it is for employers to find low-skilled labor to fill jobs like farmhands, stuff like that, that still need to be done, obviously, but you can't find anybody to do it. Like, I know I tweeted, and I'm sure everybody read the story of the Santa Barbara avocado farmer who's having problems finding people to pay $400 a day to go pick avocados. $400 a day to pick avocados, and he can't find anybody to fill the positions. So that's where I'm at with that. I really wish it was easier for low-skilled laborers to come into the country. And even as far as like employer sponsorship of these people, that is an incredibly difficult, expensive process for employers. So even if you wanted to leave that in place, it really needs to be vastly simplified and made easier for employers to sponsor employees to come into the country to work. On the topic of legal immigration, as in people coming in and becoming citizens, that's fine, that's wonderful, that's lovely, but that's also another very long, very expensive, very complicated process that not everybody has the time and money to do, even if that is something that is available to you, which for a lot of people trying to come here, that's not really even a feasible option for them, especially when you're talking about people coming from Central America whose governments aren't really the most upright. It can involve a little bit of bribing to grease the wheels, to get your paperwork through. And even if it is done completely on the up and up, this is a process that takes years and thousands of dollars, and just a lot of these people just don't have that, so it's not really a path that they can even, logistically consider, which obviously leads them into the asylum process, which leads us to our current snafu that we have going on right now. I'm sure everybody's aware that Trump has enacted this zero-tolerance policy, which basically, I'm going to try to do like a TLDR version of this. I will link in the show notes. There was an article from Texas Monthly where somebody did an interview with a woman that's actually on the ground there and has been working with people in the asylum process. And it really gives a lot of detail as to what exactly is going on down there, and kind of the really just complete mess that it is right now. But basically, here is how this goes down. So for immigrants that are entering illegally, as in they're not going to the entry ports, what Border Patrol is doing, or supposed to be doing, is rounding up everybody, putting them in detention centers, charging them with a misdemeanor because crossing the border illegally is a misdemeanor. And then what is ended up happening is, because there is a rule in place, let's try to roll this back a little bit. There's a rule in place that says that children can only be kept in detention facilities for 20 days. Over and beyond that, you either have to let the whole family out or you have to find accommodation for these children. So what ended up happening is, because of the zero tolerance policy and everybody going into detention centers, as opposed to the catch and release program that we had before, which basically said, okay, we've got you, we've charged you with a misdemeanor, you're basically sentenced to time served, you're scheduled in for your asylum hearing, and then you're released. So in lieu of catch and release, now we have the zero tolerance policy. And it's acknowledged that because now you are arresting all of these people, you are putting them all in detention centers. Obviously, it is going to take longer than 20 days to process them out of the detention facility. So now we have to take your babies and put them somewhere else. And that's kind of the legal reason for this. The actual reason is to inflict as much suffering as possible to serve as a deterrent from other immigrants crossing over illegally, which that's incredibly fucked up, obviously. I don't know why you would want to purposely hurt people like that, but that's the legal reason and the actual reason for this whole baby separation nonsense that we've been dealing with for the past 6 weeks. Now, I made the point of bringing up that this is happening to families that cross illegally because there are legal ports of entry where supposedly if you go through these ports, you're not subjected to this. But herein lies the problem. The legal entry ports seem to be closed. Like a lot. Like a suspicious amount of closed. And there have been stories of immigrants being turned away even before they get to the entry ports. So to me, this all kind of smacks of a setup. But yeah, that's where that's at. So what you're ending up having is, and just to kind of back this up even a little bit more, not all these people that are trying to come in are actually from Mexico. I mean, you've got people from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, other places in Central America. So what happens is, you make it all the way to the port. The port is closed. Obviously, you've come all this way. You're not just going to turn around and go back. So you take the next option available to you, which is to hop over the border illegally and then turn yourself into Border Patrol. So that's what a lot of these families are doing, is they're either turning themselves into Border Patrol or Border Patrol is catching them, taking them to the detention center, and then taking these people's children away from them. And it seems to be on a case-by-case basis as to how gently this is handled. Sometimes it's explained to the families what's happening. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're given a chance to console your child. Usually not. But what they're doing is they're taking these children and putting them into the Unaccompanied Minor program, which, first off, obviously they weren't unaccompanied minors before you decided to make them that. But this is where the problem comes in. The adults are processed through the asylum process through the Department of Homeland Security. The Unaccompanied Minor program is administered by Health and Human Services. So, first off, you have two sets of people. They're being processed by two completely separate government agencies that don't really communicate with each other. And the second problem is the Unaccompanied Minor program, if you weren't already aware, it's a program where if you are a minor, obviously, and you come to the U.S. of your own volition, there is a program for you to basically be kind of not really fast-tracked into the asylum process, but it's handled differently than it is for adults. But the Unaccompanied Minor program is more set up for teenagers, like people that actually came here of their own volition. So you've got the system that's meant to deal with 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And all of a sudden you have these, it cracks me up, they call them tender age children, which basically is pretty much anything, I think, under the age of 12 is what they consider tender age. And the unaccompanied minor system isn't set up to deal with children that young. So now you've got this influx of kids that aren't really suitable for the program. And now they got to figure out, like, what to do with all these kids. And it's creating a huge problem for the program because basically how it works is this. HHS is charged with housing these unaccompanied minors until such a time as they can find a family member to place them with. Now, for the teenagers that are coming over, obviously they can communicate with these people. They already have, their information. They probably already have the information of the family member that's supposed to be coming to pick them up. So, obviously, HHS takes them in, questions them, and they say, yes, this is my name. This is my birth date. This is the name, the address, the phone number of the person that you're supposed to be contacting to come pick me up. HHS contacts them, relative comes, picks them up, and then they're out of the system. Clearly, you can't do that with a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old because they don't have this information because they're babies. So now it's a situation where you have to warehouse these kids because you can't really cycle them out because the kids can't give them the information that HHS needs to cycle them out of the system. So now you've got them flying these kids all over the country. Like, you can have parents on one side of the country and kids on the other side of the country. And because nobody in this administration can understand logistics, nobody sat down to figure out a system of how to keep parents and kids kind of on a tracking system with each other. So basically, these parents are being told when they ask, where's my baby? The answer is, I don't know where your baby is. And then they have this phone number that you're supposed to call that apparently is about fucking useless. And nobody seems to be able to answer the question of where are these children? How are we going to get these children back with the parents if the parents get deported? And so it's created this insane, massive mess. And now you've got pictures of babies in here looking like baked potatoes in cages. You've got the audio of them screaming and crying. You've got pictures, and it's just, it's a horrible situation. And so, because like every other immigration-related thing that this administration has done, because they can't bother to think 3 minutes into the future, this has turned into a total clusterfuck. Except instead of this leaving people stranded in foreign countries or calling into status the legal status of 750,000 people, now you've created a whole humanitarian crisis. Good job, Trump administration, you fucking idiots. But wait, they're not done yet. Yesterday, Trump signed an executive order stopping the separation of the families, but nobody bothered to still stop to think that, logistically speaking, that's not going to work unless you address a couple of other things, mainly the fact that, to go back to the whole legal reason for this in the first place, is if you're going to do zero tolerance and you're going to prosecute everybody, this process is going to take more than 20 days, and in which case you can't have children in detention for more than 20 days. So today, actually right before this, the Department of Justice has filed in court to, what I am presuming, to get rid of the 20-day moratorium on actually having babies in detention, which I would assume any court that sees this is going to basically laugh, be like, oh, hell no, and kick it out. And then I saw that apparently Border Patrol is decided that they are not going to turn in families that show up with babies. And I don't know how that's going to work, because the whole idea behind zero tolerance is that Border Patrol is supposed to turn in everybody that crosses illegally to the DOJ for prosecution. So at this point, I mean, this whole plan is just the textbook definition of a clusterfuck. Nobody knows what anybody's doing. Nobody sat down to figure this out logistically, how it would work. And beyond the sheer logistics of it, coming up with a plan to inflict as much pain as possible on people to deter more immigration may or may not be entirely legal. The ACLU is looking into this right now. So It's another example of how inept this administration is on immigration. Except, like I said, this time you've created an actual legitimate humanitarian crisis, which is still unfolding because there are no plans of how to get these babies back with their parents before they get deported. It seems like the plan is still to leave the children in the Unaccompanied Minors program, which, as I've explained, is not going to work because they're not equipped to deal with that, and these small children do not have the information that they need to give to HHS so that they can find relatives to place them with. So, I mean, it's just, what the fuck? Like, how do you do things without bothering to stop and think them through? Like, that kills me. Like, who thought this was a good idea? It was Stephen Miller. We know who thought it was a good idea. But still, who was not like, you know, guys, maybe we should stop to think about this for a couple of minutes? No, just go fuck off, do it, and hope for the best, which obviously didn't happen. The worst happened. And now here we are. A couple more points I want to make before we move on to kind of more larger, kind of like big over-encompassing thoughts and ideas about immigration. Here's my thoughts on this whole zero tolerance policy. Crossing the border is a misdemeanor and a nonviolent offense. And what do we do with people who commit nonviolent misdemeanor offenses, class? That's right. We don't put them in fucking cages, which is what they're doing. This is ridiculous. Like, why? I mean, you think whatever you want about catch and release. I mean, it's to me, that was the only logical solution to what is going on, because we just do not have the space to warehouse all these people until asylum proceedings can happen. But you don't throw people in cages and kidnap their babies for non-violent offenses. You don't do that. And this whole idea that doing this is just, oh, it's the law, we gotta follow it. No, that's not exactly how this works. This was very much the Trump administration's choice to handle this in this way, because obviously we handled it in plenty of other ways before doing this. So this kind of like hands off, like, oh my God, you didn't have a choice, this is what has to be done. Fuck you. No, it's not. Like, there are plenty of other options available. This is the option that Trump and his administration chose, and they need to fucking own it. Like, I'm not letting them, like, wash their hands of this. Like, this is your fault. You decided to handle it like this. You decided to not think about the logistical repercussions of it. So this is all them. Like, this is all their fault. Actually, I will roll that back a little bit. It's not all their fault. Congress bears some responsibility too. And to that point, this is another example of the Trump administration trying to use people to push immigration, to push the wall, to try to push legislation, the same way he did with DACA. It's the same shit over and over and over again. And Congress needs to do something, because this shit needs to stop. To move on a little bit, and to prove that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and in no place do you find that more than social media, it's been rather interesting to watch people's responses to this whole situation. And I've seen a lot of anti-immigration things said, and I will go ahead and just put it out there. A lot of the excuses that I hear put out, and some have merit, but a lot of them sound like thinly veiled racism. Like I said, just going to put it out there. That's how I call it. But it strikes me, and I've thought about this a bit. Every time, like, the immigration debate comes up, you always seem to see these same arguments. And the current one is that immigrants want to come here and take all of our welfare and mooch off everything. And I'm so old, I remember when the line was that immigrants want to come here and take all our jobs. So I'm going to need you guys to pick one and stick with it, because it's either they want to come here and work, or they want to come here and not work. But a lot of the tone and tenor, this kind of goes back all the way, like, way back in our history, where every time a group of people wants to immigrate here, there's always kind of that it's the same things over and over again. It's always the same criticisms. Like, even before there were government programs, like when the Italians wanted to come here, it's like, oh God, look, they're a bunch of lazy dagos, greaseballs. When the Irish came here, it was like, oh, look, it's the Irish. They just want to get drunk and fight and make babies. And at least we made the Italians look a little better because apparently y'all were harder workers than us. You know, the Poles were stupid. The Jews were just going to come take all our money. And it's like, it's the same thing over and over again. They're just so old. It's so tired. Like, at least come up with new lines if you're going to be racist against people. Like, really? Quit using the same shit that we've been hearing against immigrants for forever and ever and ever. And just, it's kind of disappointing to see, for me personally, to see people kind of have that little, like, racist tinge to them. I mean, like, I'm not an idiot. I know that sentiment exists, but I'll get into it a little later in this podcast, but I have a problem with that. The other thing we got treated to on this week, because, I mean, what's a controversy without a blame game, am I right? So we basically watched Democrats blame Republicans, Republicans blame Democrats. The media ended up blaming pretty much anybody that it could find to blame. The one group of people that didn't get enough blame are the Congresses of current and decades past who have completely kicked the can on doing anything with immigration reform, leading to this current situation. But yeah, that's because obviously why would we want to find an actual solution to this problem when you could just use a situation to beat somebody else over the head because you don't like them? Like, yeah, why? Let's just do that. Let's not bother to find any kind of solution or compromise or anything like that. Let's just beat each other up. But the best/worst reaction for me on all this was Chuck Schumer, who point blank said that he wanted Trump to handle this through doing an EO because legislating is hard. Legislating is your job, you fucking moron. What do you mean it is hard? That's what you get paid to do. But that's where we're at with Congress right now. They'd rather kick it to Trump because this is hard. Making laws is hard. We don't want to do it because it's hard and we got to talk to people. So we'd rather just have Trump do it. Which, my God, this Congress, I swear to God, man, I don't know what the fuck to say about them at this point other than, can we just start over again, maybe? Can we kick them all out? Because apparently they can't do their job, so can we just get rid of them? Like, do we need them anymore? Can we just make them go away? But to bring it back to social media for a second, there were kind of 3 lines that I saw about this that just kind of blew me away. And the first one is the whole, but it's the law. Okay, I've kind of already discussed this, but there's also, I mean, over and above the fact that this, you can interpret a law, you can enforce a law however you wish to do it. There is something to be said for people who look at a horrific situation and just shrug their shoulders, go, well, it's the law. Well, fuck you too. I mean, like, that's the dumbest thing you could possibly say. Like, that's not a justification for horrific acts. It's like, what's wrong with you? Like, what goes on in your brain that you even think that's an appropriate response to that? The second one, and again, I've kind of already touched on this, is that they should immigrate legally. Well, I mean, I'm sure they would love to, but like I said earlier, sometimes they can't. Like, it's not like they're doing this illegally because it's so much more exciting and fun than doing it legally. Like, sometimes you just don't have an option, so this is what you got to do. And then the third one I saw, and this one really blew me away. And that's the idea that these people should stay in their countries and fight to take their countries back. Which, what the fuck do you think this is? Some kind of romantic movie? Like, and these will also be the first people to tell you how awful MS-13 and drug cartels are. And you want these people to stay and try to fight these people? Let me tell you what happens when you try to fight a drug cartel. Who, by the way, got their power by making it abundantly obvious that they will kill anybody and anybody who gets in their way. They don't give a shit. They'll kill a politician in broad daylight. Do you know what's going to happen if you try to fight these people? You're going to end up dead, and your family's going to find your decapitated body on the side of the road. That's what staying and fighting looks like. So that is just the god-awful, stupidest fucking idea I have ever heard. No, you do not try to fight these people. They will fucking kill you. That's what they do. They kill people. So yeah, I would want to pack up and move too. I'm not going to sit here and try to fight some valiant fight like I'm some kind of dashing street hero and I'm going to beat the drug cartels. No, I'm going to end up dead. And I'm not trying to be dead. These people aren't trying to be dead. So yeah, that's why they're leaving. And on the topic of people fleeing horrible places, I guess that's as good a pivot point as I could possibly come up with to explain my thoughts and my position on immigration. Now, it has become kind of clear to me through this current situation and situations past, like DACA and stuff like that, and even beyond that, my experiences with immigration and immigrants is apparently a lot different than a lot of other people's. I was born and raised in South Florida. So obviously we've always had a lot of people coming in, like Cubans come in. And for those of you who don't know, up until Obama ended this program, which, thanks asshole, basically Cubans coming into the country, as long as they made landfall, like if you made it here, you were automatically granted political refugee status as somebody who was fleeing a communist country. And so when you're granted political refugee status, that pretty much guarantees you're going to be granted asylum. But basically, it kind of fostered this idea of essentially having an open border for all intents and purposes between us and Cuba, because obviously people could come in and we would take them in. Obviously, nobody really went there, but anyway. But it fostered this idea that, like, of course you take in people who are fleeing shitty places. And obviously we also did the same thing with Haitians. They didn't have the same political refugee status granted to them as Cubans did, but it was always like Haitians would try to come in too. And the idea was that, like, yes, of course you're leaving this horrible situation, so of course we take you in because this is America and this is what we do. So I was kind of raised, I think, with a different mindset than people in other parts of the country were in relation to immigration, because it was always in that kind of vein of taking in people who are trying to flee awful situations, and that is a thing that you do, and that's a thing that you should do. And that really colors my opinion on immigration. Like, when I see these people trying to come in from Central America, like, I can't really divorce my feelings on them from what I saw growing up. So I can't other these people. I can't view them as a voting bloc. I can't view them as people who are going to come in and mooch off of entitlements. I can only see them as people who are trying to flee just horrible, horrible situations. Just like, I don't know how many people in this country can really wrap their heads around how bad Central America is, especially like parts of Mexico. And you talk about Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador. These places that have corrupt governments because they've been completely taken over by drug cartels. And I don't imagine that living someplace that's run by a drug cartel is really much better than living someplace that's being run by a brutal communist dictator. So I can't fault these people for wanting to come, and I can't bring myself to condemn them to turn around and go back. So this makes this very hard for me, because I understand where some people are coming from when you want to talk about not letting all these people in, but there's a part of me that's just like, these are suffering people, and this is my blind spot. This is my bleeding heart libertarianism, but I can't find it in me to want to turn away people, especially people with children, whose only crime is wanting to come here to get away from a horrible, shitty situation, especially when they have kids. And it seems inhumane to me on some level. It bothers me. Another thing that bothers me, and I've not seen it explicitly said, but there seems to be this attitude that these people leaving their homes and trying to come here is a decision that's made lightly. Like, everybody who takes that journey knows that they are risking their lives. They know they might not make it. They know they might get turned back at the border, but they keep doing it anyway. And it's not, like, that can't be an easy decision to make. Like, when you gotta try to walk from another country to here, or try to get yourself here somehow, and especially families that send their kids to try to do it alone, like, that's not an easy decision to make. And it's almost this feeling like people are so flippant about it, like it is. It's like, it's not. This is a decision that is very hard for people to make. And it's the attitude of that bothers me, and the people that don't want to acknowledge that, yes, we have this country, and yes, we have laws, and we have all that, but these are people that need help and have gone to great lengths to try to get help for themselves. And they're desperate. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people in this country don't understand, is the level of desperation that you have to attempt to do what these people are doing. Like, I grew up watching on the nightly news people floating up from Cuba, like coming up the Atlantic Ocean on rafts, dinghies, like boats meant to hold 6 people holding 20. Like, I grew up seeing what people will do when they are desperate to get out of somewhere. And that kind of leads into my thoughts on this wall situation. Mind you, there is a 90-mile wide water wall between Cuba and the United States, and that did not stop people from coming. You are not going to stop people who are desperate to escape a shit situation from escaping a shit situation. They will find a way. This wall ain't going to stop nobody. It may slow some people down, but it ain't going to stop immigration. So the whole idea of a wall just seems like the biggest waste of time and money to me, because it's stupid and it's not going to work. And of course people are going to find a way around it. Like, it's just an exercise in stupidity. It just completely ignores the fact that these people are desperate and they will go to extremes to get in. But to discuss that, you would have to discuss, why are these people so desperate to get in? Well, it's because Central America is kind of shitty. Why is Central America kind of shitty? Yeah, that's kind of the U.S. government's fault. Between the CIA going down and meddling in Central America in the 70s and 80s and our dumbass war on drugs, yeah, we're kind of responsible for why Central America is the way it is. And of course, you're never going to hear anybody, you're not going to hear any politician, you're not going to hear anybody actually point blank say that. But yeah, the U.S. government bears a fair amount of responsibility for the reason why Central America is the way it is, which to me makes it just doubly shitty that you don't want to let these people in. Because it's like, we broke your country, and now we don't want to let you escape your country. Like, you understand where that's kind of fucked up, right? Like, it's sad, because it's not their fault. It's kind of our government's fault, to be completely honest. And so I feel like that should be taken into account when deciding to let these people in or not let them in, is that we kind of, the government should feel a little bit of guilt about these people. They really should. And while we're on the topic of government feeling a little bit of guilt over this situation, Congress should feel a fuck ton of guilt over this situation, because the whole reason this keeps happening is because Congress keeps not addressing immigration. This is your job. Make a law. You can fix it. Stop kicking it over to the executive branch. Quit skirting your responsibilities. Do your fucking job. This is Congress's job, and they do bear a lot of the responsibility for why we are where we're at right now. So yeah, they need to step up. They need to do something. And when I say something, I don't mean like the half-assed something that they are probably going to do. I mean like legitimately do something. Like, codify this. Like, make it a law once and for all who gets in, how you get in. Quit kicking this to the executive branch to write executive orders that the next president's just going to overturn. Like, just do your fucking job. Is it that hard? If it is that hard, can we please just get rid of them? I mean, this is just really, it's hard. It's hard to make the argument for governments existing when they refuse to do their job. So, yeah, Congress definitely bears a lot of responsibility for why this situation is what it is right now. But I would like to offer a solution to this problem. And I know full well this is my little utopia, and this is never, ever going to actually fucking happen. But here is my solution for trying to fix this current immigration problem. 3 things are going to have to be discussed simultaneously. You're going to have to discuss immigration, you're going to have to discuss entitlement reform, and you're going to have to discuss ending the war on drugs. That's the only way this is going to get resolved. Congress is going to have to, first off, do actual immigration reform, codify it, make it so that everybody knows, everybody's on the same page of what needs to be done. Then we can do entitlement reform so that we can all figure out who's entitled to what when they get here. The tip is nobody's entitled to anything. We need to get rid of entitlements. Let's go ahead and just take this opportunity to slide that in there, okay? And then ending the war on drugs, because the situation in Central America is not going to get any better until we do. And I don't have any delusions. I don't think that if we ended the war on drugs tomorrow that the cartels would just go poof and disappear. I mean, I'm sure they would move into other ventures. I'm not stupid. But if we can take that away from them, at least some people, some governments down there might be able to break the stranglehold a little bit and possibly start to fix their countries, because as it stands right now, they don't have a chance. Like they lost. The drug cartels won. And that's because of our stupid fucking war on drugs. So that's what needs to happen. I know full good and well it will never happen. We will keep kicking the can down the road. We will keep avoiding it. We will keep half-assing the issue. And so we will keep having this discussion. Because, I don't know, I guess Congress is just a bunch of feckless cunts at this point. So, on that note, I've rambled on long enough. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you do like this, as always, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Take care, and until next time.